It is November 26, 2024. GamblersAdvisory.com, a free site. BettingAngle.us, a free site. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let me just say, boxing is part of the entertainment business. They will sell you narratives that they feel will get you excited, will get the sport on the front page of the sports section, right? But I believe insiders know that some of these narratives are false. This is one man's opinion. I don't believe Canelo fights David Benavidez ever. I believe the weight gap is going to give Canelo cover, and I believe it is cover, right? Canelo doesn't have to please us at this point. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Understand, future generations are going to remember Canelo showing up at 168 and then beating 4 champs to become the undisputed in that weight class, right? It's going to remember Canelo doing things like beating Miguel Cotto, beating James Kirkland, beating Kovalev, right? So Canelo's going to be first ballot. There aren't a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame who you look at and you say, oh, that guy should have fought this other guy, right? In the moment, okay, we want Canelo to fight Benavidez. We understand Benavidez is bigger than Canelo. Well, the point of this video is to talk about how much bigger. Understand, someone who knows Benavidez well, Benavidez' father, who's also Benavidez' trainer, is talking about the possibility of David gaining 25 pounds. I'm not making this up. Going up to 200 pounds to fight a guy he sparred with, the unified champion at 200, Gilberto Ramirez. Right now, folks, if David's at 175, and you need to view this Morrell fight as a fight that Benavidez has taken in part because he knows that if he waits, that fight might no longer be available for him. By the way, I was impressed with Benavidez. I saw Benavidez and Morrell pubbing the fight, and I looked at David and I thought, wow, he's in shape. Right? I believe one of the secrets to winning in boxing is to always be in shape. Benavidez is in shape now. But what that tells you is that even an in-shape Benavidez and his father know that Benavidez is not long for 175 pounds. Right? So Canelo, who's flirting with the idea of fighting Terence Crawford, if you believe reports, right? Canelo, who's still a title holder at 168 pounds, to me, has cover. In other words, if Benavidez fights Morrell and then moves up in weight, or if Benavidez fights Morrell, then fights the winner of the rematch between Bivol and Beterbiev. Right, folks, we're going to get distracted. Our eye's going to be off the ball. All of these people who want Canelo to fight Benavidez, who's younger than Canelo, right? Bigger and younger. They're going to start to fall by the wayside. You're going to have another group that's going to want to see Benavidez against some of these other fighters, right? The Bivol-Beterbiev winner. So just understand, you need to circle every interview you see of Benavidez' father talking about Benavidez fighting Zurdo Ramirez, right? Understand, once you put on the weight, you really can't lose it. There's no weight class between 175 and 200. If Benavidez goes up to 200, he's not going to come back down to fight a guy at 168. That simply is not happening. So, of course, it keeps Benavidez' name in the paper when he says, hey, I want to fight Canelo. Right? Of course, what are you going to talk to Canelo about if you want to put him on the edge of his seat? Right? You're going to mention the big bad wolf out there, David Benavidez. But Canelo's a smart guy. He knows he has cover. He never has to fight Benavidez. Right? Folks, that fight's not happening. Now let's talk about something that needs to be talked about here. Wasn't that unbeaten William Zepeda on the canvas against light-hitting Tevin Farmer? Let's not pretend that Tevin Farmer is some big puncher. Right? He's not. Tevin Farmer is a guy who can surprise you, though. He's sudden. He's that counterpuncher who can plan it the right way, catch you when you're not ready, drop you, like he dropped William Zepeda. But this is different type of power than, let's say, a Gervonta Davis, where you get hit like Ryan Garcia got hit. You think for a second. You actually have a second, and the pain hasn't gone away. You need to take a knee. Then when you take a knee, you think to yourself, man, why would I ever continue fighting this guy? Let's face it, Farmer doesn't have that kind of power. That's not him. So what was he doing knocking down inverted southpaw William Zepeda? You all understand that Zepeda is actually a righty. That Zepeda is throwing his heavy hand out front. Right? Well, let me just say this. That Farmer fight was close. We'll talk about another close fight. The Jose Ramirez, Arnold Barboza fight. That was close. Right? You know, I like to say knockouts cause amnesia. Well, sometimes wins cause amnesia. The Zepeda fight was close. I'm sure there are a lot of people behind the scenes who support Zepeda who are wiping the sweat off their brow. Right? Zepeda had more volume. But let's just say Farmer was unintimidated. Farmer wasn't running. He's hanging around the pocket. He's timing William Zepeda. Zepeda can be timed. Now, Farmer happened to be a legitimate southpaw, not an inverted southpaw. So what that means is that both of their dominant hands lined up. In other words, Zepeda is throwing his right jab, and it's right across from Farmer's dominant left hand, right? Which, of course, Farmer still is able to slip in to get the knockdown. But understand, Zepeda, and I know he has an injury to his left. Who cares? That's his non-dominant hand, right? You know, Zepeda really needs the volume, because it's that volume that keeps a southpaw's straight right at home. It's that volume that keeps a southpaw's left counter at home. Right? So, of course, because Zepeda is hurt now, after an uninspiring fight, right? That's what the fight was. It was competitive. It was uninspiring. Don't get me wrong. It's very inspiring if you're on the Farmer side of the play. He looked great. His name is back in rotation. But if you're from the Zepeda side of the play, you were thinking, man, you know, can our guy make some adjustments, do something new other than pump that right hand? You know, he's fighting a guy who's older than him, much older than him. Right? Couldn't he say, hey, enough of this style type approach. Let me just come in and rough this guy up. Right? This guy doesn't have the power I have. Let me cuff this guy around. This guy's bothering me. This guy's knocking me down. This fight's competitive. Why don't I turn this into a street fight instead of a boxing match? Zepeda couldn't do that. So let me say this. You know, it's bad news for Shakur Stevenson, because I think the fans aren't buying into the big reputation. Stevenson needs a big fight, right, against someone at least the stature of William Zepeda. And I think Stevenson has trouble in that fight. Now, of course, Zepeda's on the shelf for a while. Let me also say this, too. If I'm William Zepeda and I'm getting dropped by Tevin Farmer's left hand, what happens if I fight Gervonta Davis and I get hit with his left hand? Folks, let's just say Davis hits a lot harder than Tevin Farmer. Let me also say this too. The angles are crucial. This is something Stevenson should focus on. The angles are crucial for Zepeda. Right? Look at the Farmer fight. He needs to be off at the side, because he doesn't want a southpaw opponent hitting him with a right hook. I mean, understand, Zepeda's left hand is a bit of an illusion. Right? You see him standing there and you say, oh, he's a southpaw, and oh, that left hand must be his dominant hand. No, it's not. Right? So, someone who can move. Farmer makes a mistake, in my opinion, in some of the rounds here, where he just sets up shop. He doesn't move with Zepeda. Right? Understand, someone has to deny Zepeda the angles. Has to move with him. I'm not sure if that person is Gervonta Davis, but I do think Davis gives Zepeda a lot more of a fight than, let's say, a Shakur Stevenson. But what Stevenson might be able to do is to move with Zepeda, to set it up so Zepeda doesn't have a straight line to throw his dominant right hand as a jab. Right? Let me just say, too, Zepeda, to me, on the wrong angles, if you could force him to use his left for defense, if you're a southpaw and you can throw a right hook, I think Zepeda would have problems. Let's move one weight class up. Let's talk about a major event in the division. I believe styles make fights. I don't believe you necessarily have to be the most skilled fighter. I think if you have the right style, you can give people problems. Now, at 140 pounds, you have a lot of guys. Sandor Martin, Jermaine Ortiz, Jack Catterall, Arnold Barboza, who are great on their back foot. Right? You understand, you're watching a match. You're about to have one involving Richardson Hitchens. Right? And you have a lot of guys who aren't there to blow you out. They're there to outbox you. Right? They're on their back foot. Well, let me just say, one of my favorite front foot fighters, a guy who was there to hunt you down, a guy who, in my opinion, would make for some great fights at 140 pounds against this back foot posse. Right? Just picture Jack Catterall backing up, setting traps, and just picture Jose Ramirez saying, look, player, I don't care about your traps. You put a bear trap by the front door, I'm going to just step over it and continue to walk forward. Right? Jose Ramirez, in my eyes, style-wise, was one of the most important fighters in any weight class in boxing. Understand, you have a guy at 140 who's great in the pocket, Teofimo Lopez, but he can't follow you away from the pocket. I thought he lost that Sandor Martin fight. Let's at least admit that Martin knocked him down. I thought Teofimo lost that Jermaine Ortiz fight. Right? I'm not buying the boxing hype. I'm not buying the judges' scorecards. I believe Teofimo is a very popular fighter, especially when he fights in New York City. I believe he's a tremendous fighter. He's won some big fights. He beat Josh Taylor. right? But at the same time, if you know how to move, particularly if you're a southpaw, you can keep him at bay. Well, understand, Jose Ramirez, different, right? You move away from Ramirez, Ramirez is going to move toward you. Right now, I don't mean to belittle Arnold Barboza's fight. He fought a great fight against Ramirez. Right? Two of the judges had that fight 7-5. Right? In fact, not 7-5. I believe it was just a 10-round fight. Two of the judges had Ramirez losing the fight by 2 rounds. Folks, Ramirez is on his front foot. I have the highlights in my favorites folder. All I'm saying is that Barboza Catterall fight, wow, that's going to be a little bit too cute, isn't it? Both guys are unbeaten. Don't get me wrong, that's a must-watch fight, but let's face it, both guys are going to be leaning on their back foot. Right? That's a fight where no one's going to want to take the lead. Jose Ramirez was the guy who would take the lead. I thought he was the guy who would test a Jermaine Ortiz, a Jack Catterall. Right? Well, he lost. And folks, when you lose market leverage. Right? So pay close attention to 140. Right? Just understand the back foot has taken over the division. You do have a great in-the-pocket guy, but he can't find the back footers, the guys who can move. Now, I love defense. I love strategy. I have nothing against the back foot, but let's just say you need to have some front footers too, don't you? Right? If you're going to have an explosive division, you need to have some guys in there who style-wise are going to make the division rock, paper, scissors. You should consider the Ramirez loss a big subtraction in that 140 division of pressure fighters. Right now, you have a bunch of guys who are back foot happy. That Richardson-Hitchens-Liam Parrow fight, I don't think Hitchens is even going to try to knock out Liam Parrow. Understand, Hitchens, like Barboza, has a knockout percentage of less than 50%. Right? You have a lot of guys who are going to force the judges to pay attention because their fights are likely to go to the judges' scorecards. You didn't quite have that with Jose Ramirez. Right? If you weren't a highly skilled back foot guy who could counter him, you were going to have problems. Let's remember that Josh Taylor fight. That's the height of Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor at one point's over by the ropes. And of course, Ramirez comes over by the ropes and Taylor is able to counter him, to hurt him. That's a big moment. Right? You need a George Foreman type of front foot guy in there to test these back foot guys. We just lost that at 140. Right? Let's just say Ramirez, even in the Barboza fight, and Barboza's magnificent. Right? The last round, you notice Ramirez's head snaps back a few times. Barboza's that good with the timing. But just in terms of forcing the action, you knew there was going to be action in that Jose Ramirez Barboza fight because Ramirez was going to force the action. Right? He just lost. I hope one of these back foot guys makes the mistake of giving the old man another shot. I personally would love to see Ramirez against Jack Catterall, Ramirez against Shakur Stevenson would be an excellent fight, right? Stevenson needs a bully guy to try to walk him down so Stevenson could, show us his brilliance. right? He's opponent dependent, in my opinion, in terms of needing that roughhouse opponent to bring out the best in him, right? I'm just saying the Catterall Barboza fight, let's just say you don't want to close your eyes because you might doze off, right? Let's just say Jermaine Ortiz, Sander Martin, you don't want to close your eyes, you might doze off, right? You really needed someone who was more front foot at 140 than Teofimo Lopez. Ramirez just lost to Barboza. Let's just say I hope he gets back in the saddle just for the boxing fan, just so we have someone who's going to try to cut off the ring on some of these back foot guys. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section of this YouTube video. Thanks for stopping by.